Hi, ladies. Welcome to the interview with Andrea Spirov. You guys are going to love learning more about Andrea and what it is that she does. So welcome, Andrea. Please introduce yourself to the girls.
Hi, Christina. Thanks so much for having me. Hi, ladies. I'm Andrea Spirov. I am the principal consultant and founder of Spired Marketing. It's my fourth startup. So I'm also an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, many years.
So tell them a little bit what a serial entrepreneur is.
A serial entrepreneur is someone who keeps starting companies, who just can't get enough of starting companies and bringing their new ideas to life. So I've had a beverage company, a travel media company, my marketing business, and also a food company, so a food tech company. Over the course of about 16 years.
Wow.
Did you want to know more about the marketing business, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just in case, because you threw out that term, I'm not sure if everybody knew what a serial entrepreneur was. So I just want to make sure that, so tell us a little bit about your marketing company.
Yeah, so I work exclusively with founders and CEOs to make sure that their messaging is aligned with every piece of communications that they're doing throughout their entire business. So we work really closely together to form a strategy, because when your values and your goals are not aligned, especially as an entrepreneur, and you have incongruent behavior between what's written on your website or your human resources materials versus the goals and objective of what's happening in the C-suite. So your CEO, your chief operations officer, your chief sales officer. So I'm working with companies, but I have to work from the top down. And that might include research. My job functions could include strategic planning, copywriting, other types of writing, including the creation of any kind of marketing collateral. So any kind of ads, social media posts, sales letters, scripts, keynote speeches, taglines, just about anything to do with marketing that's not design related.
Awesome. Very cool. So are there aspects of what you do in marketing that maybe most people don't think about when it comes to marketing? Because I know when I think about marketing, I think a lot about like the ads that I see on TV or that I might see in a magazine, that kind of thing. So, because you talked about like keynote speeches and that kind of thing. So what are some of the marketing pieces that most people don't think about?
So marketing could be anything, and I think about strategic communications as a general umbrella for what I do. So marketing could be anything, any piece of communication between the company and an end customer or a stakeholder. So if you're talking to even your employees, or if you're talking to your shareholders, that's still a marketing piece. It's just not always thought of that way. And then when you talk about ads, you're talking about communications, but the other thing people don't think about is that marketing is such a giant umbrella and it has other facets to it. So you're talking about this traditional marketing mix: product, placement, price, promotion. Most people think about the promotion basket. They forget that pricing is a strategy. They forget that the product design is a strategy, or the aspects of that product is part of the marketing bucket, and your placement in stores. And so when I was running a CPG, a consumer packaged goods company, we had to think about all kinds of things, like what price are we on the shelf? Where do we sit on the shelf? And then grocery stores have to think about each channel, each different type of product and how that's arranged, and all of the different marketing that goes on in trade. It gets really, really complicated. But most people, when they think of marketing, they're thinking about kind of the fun stuff, the ads, the social media posts that they see, all the pretty pictures of product images and the package design. But there's a lot that goes into marketing, and it all has to be aligned.
Absolutely. And I was even reading can't remember what I was reading, but I was reading something about and they were using the example of like the grocery store and how like product placement in there, like there's a reason why the products that you see at eye level are there, and how like that's a piece of marketing strategy and everything. So I think it's really there's a lot more to marketing than I think a lot of people realize. So it's very, very cool. It's a very interesting line of work for sure.
Absolutely. And usually when they're at eye level, the brands have paid a lot more money to be at eye level. So there's all sorts of ways that the retailer and the supermarket makes money that people don't even know about or think about. And I could talk about this forever about why our food system is broken because a lot of it has to do with money. You know, the giant food companies are only a few of them. They can afford to spend a lot more money on in-store displays and placement than smaller brands. So it's always good to get out and support. You know, your dollar really is a vote. So it is really good if you believe in small independent brands or healthier food. It's always good to support those brands because they have way less money to get in front of you.
Awesome. So think about that, ladies. The next time you're at the grocery store, look above and below eye level. So what has motivated you to want to get into marketing? I mean, it's fascinating, but what motivated you to want to do that?
So I was always a strong writer. I was the editor of my high school newspaper, and I got through, and I wanted to go to journalism school and was kind of talked out of it by my dad because he said, oh, you're never going to make money as a journalist. So I got into college and I decided to choose something in the School of Communications though, because I still wanted to stick through that. And I was also into art. So I got this idea in my head that I could use art to solve problems. So I chose advertising, and in the communication school where I went to university, at University of Miami, you had to also choose a discipline from the College of Arts and Sciences. So I chose sociology. So I had that double major and a minor in marketing. And so then I just got really into the love of the work. So you're just using your brain, being a critical thinker to solve problems related to consumer issues typically. So figuring out what people like and what people want and what their problems are, and then marrying that up with a creative strategy or aligning the company value with that was just fascinating work for me.
Just sound really cool. I really like the phrase that you used there, though, is like art to solve problems. Like that is a really unique way, I think, of thinking about marketing, because that is, I mean, like there's a problem that needs to be solved, and how can I use art to get to it? So the art of the written word as well as like visual art. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's what got me into my career. And then from there, it was just navigating through the career. So I started my career, my first job out of college was at a Fortune 100. It was actually the number 20 company at the time in their corporate communications department, assisting the manager of corporate image through a really important merger. So I was working with their advertising agency, and I got to know the business a little bit more. I had seen some during my undergrad and worked in an agency as an intern and things like that. But I got really to see, what happens when you're working with a gigantic client and what that looks like on the other side. So I decided I wanted to be on the creative side, and I went back to school and did my portfolio at one of the top international portfolio schools in San Francisco. And from there, I moved to New York. I worked at big ad agencies there, and then also in Australia because my husband's Australian, so I lived there for a time. I worked with clients like Target, Tetley, Coca-Cola, so really big clients, some of their smaller clients as well. I also worked in-house as a freelancer for Macy's on projects like Spirov. So I worked with a lot of big clients there. The agency world is tough. I found it to be a little bit challenging because sometimes as a junior team member, you didn't really always get to present your work. So you might work on something that never saw the light of day because you were competing with the more senior teams. And there weren't as many opportunities for women at that time, especially in Australia, in the agency world. It was very small. So I also went back and did my master's degree, and that I ended up doing in media and communications, which is essentially journalism school. I got to work in the newsroom at a newspaper called The Age, which is one of the top newspapers in Australia. So I have that background as well. And then from there, I left the working world to start companies. I had been involved with a beverage company that I was a co-founder of for all during that time that I was working in agencies. So I had a little bit of entrepreneurial experience. I started a travel media company. So that took me traveling and writing all over the world. And I worked with, at that time, I also got to work with companies like Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts and Radisson because we would write for them. My husband and I were doing this media company together, and I sold that. And then we were in Houston by then. And after that is when I started the food company, which is challenging. So it's got its own set of challenges, and that still exists. But I realized that what I really, really love is the marketing side of it. And so now this agency is my next venture.
It's very cool. And so, interspersed through your journey there, you were talking about all the different experiences that you did. So I was just kind of wondering, so if we've got a young lady who is watching this who is interested in going into and pursuing a career within marketing, like what does it take to get that job in marketing? Like what are some of the experiences that she should be looking for, internships or like courses, that kind of thing? So what does it take to do what you do?
So I think there are lots of different pathways. Like you just heard my entire journey from woe to go, and it definitely wasn't a planned journey. I really always thought my career would be a lot more linear than it was. You absolutely have to be a strong writer and a critical thinker, even if you want to do the artistic portion. The best designers I know do a lot of strategy work behind it. You have to be able to ask really good questions, and sometimes the questions that you ask are going to be more important than the answers. So really being a curious person. And then most places, because it is a very competitive field, most agencies, most internships that you might get, they're going to want to see some kind of a qualification. You don't necessarily have to study advertising as your undergrad. I think that if you chose something in the humanities or something in the business school, you would be well positioned to go and do some finishing work on it. There are advertising schools. So Miami Ad School is where I went. They have a number of programs from research all the way to strategic design. And you also should choose kind of early also what side you want to be on. So if you're going to be a designer, you have to be really, really meticulous about making things look beautiful and have a certain style and be ready to develop all of those kinds of skills. I started my career as an art director, and I didn't like that part as much as I like the strategy part. So I realized I probably should have always stuck with writing. That was a mistake. I felt like it was a little bit of a mistake I made early on, but at least I have both aspects now. So it's very helpful to me in my job now because I know how to manage an artistic team. But the writing is really where my heart was. So just trying to figure out what you really like. And being a strong writer will also always help you in business. So sometimes writing and communications are looked at as even in big companies, which is why I've chosen to work with CEOs and founders now exclusively for this next couple of decades of my career, probably forever, because I feel like communications and marketing is something, especially the communications piece, is something that kind of, you always see junior positions for this. So it's quite easy to get a junior job as a marketing intern, but it's not given really as much respect as it should be, because companies don't understand that what they are is what comes out of their mouth. So as a company, you could be thinking one thing, and if your communications aren't aligned with your goals and objectives in your company, you've got a huge problem because you have a muddled corporate message, you're losing money, you're losing buy-in. And I feel like most people who just put their marketing director in front of the agencies that they work with, and the CEO is not really completely involved in the process, it's a big problem for companies that I notice. I see the inconsistencies just because I'm paying attention to it all the time. So I think that whatever business you want to get into, if it's not marketing or it's not communications, be a strong writer. Take some writing courses, figure out how to express your ideas, develop your own style, and be confident in what you have to say.
Well, I think that's like what you were talking about, like the CEO has, like, they've got their goals and everything like that, and the messaging that's going out isn't congruent, like they lose money and that kind of thing. So, but I think that also can be applied even to just like a person and the way that they're interacting with others and that kind of thing. You think, that you want to say something, or you think that you are expressing something, but your communication style, you're not really doing it, then you find that that there's friction with the way that you're, with relationships, with trying to find jobs, that kind of thing. So I agree that, like, I think communication is a really good course. I mean, even if that's not going to be your major, a course to take to find out the best way to communicate those thoughts and feelings and ideas that you have. So absolutely, I think that's a really great piece of advice. So what has probably been the biggest thing that you've struggled with in your career, and how did you handle it?
So right now, I find that sales is really challenging for me, because when I worked in an agency, they just handed you the client. You get these great clients, and you present your work, and you never had to go out and chase the client and sell yourself. So even though I feel like I should have had a lot more experience selling, sales is always challenging for me, and I'm working on it all the time. I think that's another thing to remember, is that you're always learning. I'm right now doing sales training programs. I work with a business coach. You're always going to be developing yourself in your career, especially now. It's not like you go through school and you get your degree and you get into the workforce and you're done. If you did a really good job in figuring out who you are and what you want, that might happen for you, but most people I know are on their I'm 40, so by this time they're maybe in their third career, just the way also the economy is changing so much. And then I think failure is really important. So a lot of people, I used to be terrified of failure, and I used to feel so bad and so badly about myself when things wouldn't turn out exactly the way I wanted them to. But I've started to learn to look at failure a little bit differently now. Failure is necessary, and if you're a smart, capable person, you're excited by failure, because you're always going to be testing what works and what doesn't work. And if you're not doing that, you're not learning enough about yourself or the process of what you're doing, and you're not trying out every option. Sometimes you get lucky, you land on it right away, but most people are seeing the finish, the beautiful slam dunk that the basketball player makes, but they didn't see him doing drills for, like, they say it takes 10,000 hours to be a master at something. You don't see all the hard things or all the times that they failed. All that makes it to the news is the end result, you know, the several $100 million exit, or and maybe sometimes the founders will come out and be honest about their stories, or, you know, how many times, oh, this was my 8th company, and the other ones, I lost all this money before. Sometimes they're honest about that, but most often they're not. They're just like, yeah, I did it. And you don't see all of that failure that it took to get there, just the little adjustments that they had to make all along the way. So I think you have to embrace failure. And I think we were talking earlier about schools. Schools don't always encourage you to fail. Schools kind of encourage a cookie cutter, follow the rules, pass this test kind of thing. And you've got to not let that get you down. You have to really be your own person. I don't mean go get into trouble and cause trouble, but I mean, be your own. Don't be afraid of making a mistake in school. You know, you're trying to learn something and maybe you had a different way, or you had a different question. Get the help that you need to get where you need to go. But if you do make a mistake, just ask yourself why. Why did I make that mistake? What did I learn from it? What will I do better next time? Anytime I have an important sales call or something, and I've been trained to do this, I'm always asking myself, what went right? What could go better next time? What do we want to change? Like, what little adjustment do we want to make it a more successful event next time? And you can do that just with yourself, you know, as you're working on something. It's like, I didn't get an A that time. Why did that happen? What do I need to do better next time? Or if it's not about getting an A, maybe it's just about having more successful. Maybe you're competing or something and you want to do better next time. You always have to be asking those questions. Those things don't just happen just because you do it over and over. That practice makes perfect. That's true. But if you're not being analytic about it and really paying attention to the mistakes that you're making, which are necessary, then you won't get that perfection ever.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I definitely really feel like a lot of times, like you said, like a lot of times schools are saying, like, you know, you shouldn't fail or whatever. They kind of give you, they're not necessarily saying that, but they are. That's what a lot of us get that impression from is. And so it's kind of like, it's, if you were going to do it perfect the first time you tried it, you wouldn't need school in the first place. And second, like, don't be afraid to when you've done something and maybe it didn't turn out exactly the way that you wanted it to, not only asking yourself, but, you know, like, if you did a homework assignment, or you did a test, or you did a project, or you went on an interview and you didn't get the job, don't be afraid to, like, go back and say, hey, can you help me understand why? You know, what was it that I did wrong, or what could I have done better? Like, you know, don't be afraid to ask for that follow-up. Nobody, I think, is going to reject you in helping you grow, because it's a growth piece. So don't be afraid to do that. It definitely is full of anxiety and makes you nervous and everything to do it, but don't be afraid to do it. You'll learn a lot in the process. What has been maybe the funnest or the most rewarding piece of your career?
If I have to look back, it was all the travel writing. We used to work with tourism boards. So like the Jordanian tourism board flew us out for a whole week, and we had a personal escort and tour and stayed in all, like, the best places in all of Jordan, and got to report and write on that. And that was just something I started, excuse me, something I just had like an idea for, and I just set it up, and we just decided that we were going to do some traveling and just wound up making a business out of it on the fly. It wasn't something that was planned. I didn't incorporate it. It's just something that I was doing as I was going. And I just started saying, well, maybe we could stay in some of these places for free instead of paying for it. And I used to just email. That's when I was really great at sales. I used to just email people. I made a little media kit, and I used to just email any time we were going to a place. I would just send send them my kit and say, do you have any opportunities for us? And so many places just constantly want their hotel, their restaurant, their tour company, their destination. They want those to be out there in the media and being shared on social. And I had developed a following. We were a top 100 travel blog. And so we had tons of great adventures. I mean, places that I never would have been able to afford to stay at on my own, and places I would have never gone. So looking back, if I could do that constantly for the rest of my life, I think that would be enjoyable. And a lot of people do things like that. There are a lot of travel bloggers that I know that I met when I was doing that work that are still doing it. So there are all kinds of opportunities. I mean, you can do anything that you want with your life. You just have to have the idea and the perseverance to go out there and ask for it and ask for help.
No, exactly. I mean, that would be the thing, is that if you've got an idea, don't be afraid to pursue it. I mean, that's the lesson that I just learned from your experience there, is that it's just, you've got an idea, give it a shot, see what happens, you know? And you might just be able to get to travel around the world. So I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Hard to do with kids. Hard to do with kids. But do it when you're young is what I was going to say.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. How has specifically your career within marketing, how has that been different than you thought it was going to be?
So I assumed that I would be on just a steady path. Okay, I'm an art director, I'm a creative director, I'm going to become a partner in an agency, and then I'm going to go out and start my own agency. And actually, I have started my own agency. I had such a roundabout curve to get there, and it's a lot smaller, obviously, than what I would have envisioned for myself at this stage. But I'm a no regrets kind of person, so I wouldn't trade anything. But I think that thinking that it would be a more linear path for me was the difference. I don't even know if that's possible nowadays. I feel like most people are having many more career changes, especially the young people, than we ever thought to have, those of us who are in our 40s and above. I just think that's how it is now.
I definitely agree. Like it's always, no matter what kind of career. I mean, I know, like, growing up, that was it. It was the whole, like, you went to college, you got a job, and you stayed with that job forever, you know, until you retired. And that just is not the case anymore. And that's one of the things too that, ladies, I'd love for you to realize and embrace, that one, the job that you go into college thinking that you're going to get, or may not be the job that that you end up with, that you think that you want to do. I know that, like, I went into college thinking I was going to be, this is going to date me here, but I thought I was going to be the next Barbara Walters, you know, and took my first communications class in college and hated it. So, you know, going into college, go in with an open mind, ladies. That it really is that truly is your time to do some exploring is into what it is that you might want to do as a career, and gather as many skills as you can possibly gather while you're there. So, well, thank you so very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Ladies, be sure that you scroll down the page. Below this video is going to be a little bit more from Andrea. She's got some pictures and some more details about what it is that she does. And then below that, remember, is the comment section. And so if you've got any questions or comments for Andrea, please go ahead and post it in there. We will make sure that she gets notified and comes back and answers those questions. So have a great day, and we'll see you in the next interview. Bye.